So I want to say a big welcome to Nyasha and Kimishka. I am so excited to have you both here because we're going to be talking all about the new deck, which is, let me shuffle it around here, the Black Tarot, which is an absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous deck. It feels beautiful, it looks beautiful, and the spirit and the energy behind it is also absolutely beautiful. So we're going to hear a lot more about that today. And we're going to talk a little bit too about how tarot can be used as a tool for activism, because I think this is really important. And it's so refreshing to see something like tarot to be used in a really positive and empowering way in this way. So welcome. I'm super thrilled to have you. How are you both doing today?
Super well. Thank you for having us in this space.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And we're truly global here because I'm in Australia. Nyasha is in the US, right? And also Kimishka is in South Africa, or no, you're not in South Africa, you're from South Africa, but maybe you're in the US, yeah.
Sorry, I'm in South Korea, but yes.
Sure, why not? Fabulous. Well, that really is like the true global nature of tarot and this ability to connect on the internet. So I want to talk first about both of your journeys with tarot. Like, what has brought you into this space? And then we'll talk a little bit about how it's inspired you to take on Black Tarot and create Black Tarot. So Nyasha, do you want to share your personal journey?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in the church. I think a lot of us did. And I don't know, something always felt uh, just like it wasn't flowing the way I wanted it to flow. And things were not, I felt like I was saying things in church, but like not truly understanding what I was saying, which is ironic when you understand intention and, you're diving into those things for yourself. But yeah, my parents, it wasn't about denomination. It was about the outreach of the church. So what is the church doing in the world? So I grew up, I was baptized Lutheran. I've been Mennonite. I've been in the Anglican church. I've been through quite a few denominations. Um, and, I've just kind of felt like I wanted that connection, but the church didn't feel like the correct space. Um, Tarot in itself, I got my first exposure with my best friend in college. She had a deck that was like light exposure in the beginning. And then I, more recently in my later 20s, started getting more intrigued by decks. And then that's also where my spirituality was starting to change. And so I came across, first I thought witchcraft. I thought, oh, I'm a witchcraft. And I was trying to figure out what kind of witch I am and all these things. And while that felt more correct, it still didn't feel exactly like what was aligned. And then I walked into ancestral veneration, and that felt so correct, in alignment with me finding my roots and connecting with my roots, and then connecting with my ancestors and working with them. So when I first started playing around with decks and just working with decks, I was just kind of asking for answers from my shadow self and from the universe. And then now that I've moved into ancestral veneration, I'm definitely doing it through asking my ancestors specifically, and sometimes a specific ancestor. Being adopted, I started off pretty general, and now thankfully, as I've been connecting with my family more, I'm able to do it in a more specific way.
Beautiful, beautiful. And, just before we jumped on to record this call, we each pulled a card. And what I really appreciated, Nyasha, about your question to the tarot was, it was not just like, what do I need to know, but what do my ancestors want to know? So I think that's something really special and unique about how you're working with the tarot and how you've expressed the tarot through your cards as well. So I really want to acknowledge that because I think it's, really special. Yeah. And Kimishka, you as the artist of this deck, how has tarot come into your life?
Actually, through Nyasha. before that, I hadn't had much exposure. I knew about tarot, but I didn't know a lot about it. And as soon as she asked me to, would you be interested in illustrating a tarot deck? I was like, oh, okay. Wait, what is that? Should I look more into it? And funny enough, I just through illustrating the deck, I got more and more in touch with what tarot is. And it was more powerful than I thought initially. And yeah, that it's very short, but that's basically how I got in touch with tarot, was through Nyasha and illustrating this deck.
Yeah, fantastic. And actually, I can resonate with it because when I worked on Everyday Tarot with Running Press and Eleanor Grosh, who illustrated the deck, that was her experience too. She'd not really had much to do with tarot, but I got to say, like, this magic happens. Like, she produced it within 2 months. Like, once we locked in, like it just flew, and it just was expressed so quickly. And I think she too was kind of like in that swirl of like, oh, this is pretty amazing. And like it's almost magnetic tarot, I think. We also see it, in Biddy tarot when we start working with people who may not know tarot. As soon as they just get a little bit of a taste, it's like,
Yeah,
and
exactly. Although I have to say, I don't think I would have gotten into it if I wasn't going through my own spiritual awakening phase. And I think Nyasha saw that through my illustrations, and that's how she sort of got me on board with illustrating the tarot, and then also sort of hooked me onto the spiritual world and what tarot really is.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I'm also kind of curious about this in creating a deck and the relationship between the creator or the author, such as yourself, Nyasha, and then the artist. How do you make sure that you have this connection that, Nyasha, your vision can really come to life through the work that Kimishka's doing? Was there a process? How did you end up working together in this way?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is Kimishka knows me, like we're friends. So she knew me before we even started working on the deck. So that amplifies her understanding of, my site and the kind of things that bring life for me. And then, I also, Kimishka's got a beautiful eye. She's really good at just seeing if something works visually. And so even sometimes when I'm like, I want all these ideas, she's very quick to tell me, okay, we might have to simplify this idea a lot, just to make it make sense. But she's really great at me coming forth with like, hey, this is like what I see for the Ace of Coins. Can we make this happen? And she figures out a way to beautifully illustrate that in this pretty minimalistic way, that showcases and gives the energy I'm looking for.
Mm. And what about your experience, Kimishka? Like, how do you make sure that you're really honoring that vision of the deck?
So something that was really lovely that Nyasha did was she gathered all these like reference images of what she was feeling. And I also remember going through like a mood board with her, and just through that, I was able to understand her vision a little bit more. I think if someone had just come to me and been like, this is the idea I have, and this is what I want to do, and I didn't actually visually see what they were looking for, I think it would be a lot harder. And Nyasha was extremely accommodating in terms of letting me run free with an idea. So often I'd see her vision and I'd be like, okay, this makes sense and I'd really like to do this, but I'd like to change a couple of things. And I guess us being friends really did help us like get through a lot of the deck together. And it wasn't just that. I mean, every card had a story for us. Every time we went through something, we were actively talking about like the little elements and what do they mean to us and what are we trying to, get across with the imagery. And it was delightful. We would pull cards before any of our sessions, and I think that really helped me in getting her vision, helping people see her vision. Yeah, it was a really interesting process.
Yeah.
I will add that like the energetics are so important, right? Like, first of all, tarot is, every card is something that's you can experience in your life. And so as we're creating, we're experiencing. So that is something that's a continuous process that's happening all while you're doing the creating. But also, you know, we had a very specific intention and goal for the deck and its users, anybody who's engaging with the deck. And so when we felt like we were maybe off energetically, or we had some shadow work to do or something to address, we would step back from the creative process and be like, okay, like, and because we're friends, you know, that helps in terms of us helping each other go through what we're processing or what we're working through. And then once we are able to, you know, work through whatever was going on and we're able to get back on track, then we would come back to the deck. So creative process, you know, you have, I mean, people call them, you know, when you have writer's block or creative block, but I don't think it's necessarily a block. I think it's sometimes this pause of things you have to work through for the creative project to continue to develop as it's meant to.
Yes. Yeah. And the energy is so important. And I think what's interesting is you just cannot apply a linear timeline to like, these 5 cards must be complete this week, because, you know, sometimes like those 5 cards could happen in one day. Other times it might take a month, right? And I think it's so important to honor that process and to really stay true to the energy and the essence. Because I don't know about you, but when I was working on our first deck, the Everyday Tarot, you know, we'd come up to a card like, I don't know, Tower, and we'd have this kind of tower moment going on at the same time that we're designing it, and we're like battling through the kind of the feelings and the energy of that. And you just have to honor it, don't you? You can't ignore it and go, oh, must just design card, get it done. It's a whole different process.
100%. And I think Kimishka can also speak to that certain suits were much easier flow for us. I think we had better balance in those than maybe other suits. We still had shadow work and things to work through within those suits.
Yeah.
Right. It was a big one for us, especially the knives. That was incredibly difficult. It was the moment where we both realized that there was like this turbulence going on at that time. And I think we created this deck we started at the end of 2020. So there was a lot going on at the time. We were going through lockdown periods, and the world at that time was also going through like different sort of moments that we were feeling ourselves. And I think as we were creating the deck, we realized that was really impacting us a lot, like going through each deck, illustrating each card, kind of felt like an emotional roller coaster sometimes, for the both of us.
Yeah.
But it was really nice to know that I had Nyasha there and being incredibly supportive the whole way through. And there were definitely times where I felt like I had imposter syndrome. And it was like, am I really doing this? Is this happening? No, I can't. I really can't do this. And I think this definitely happened through doing the knives throughout the suit, where Nyasha was incredibly supportive, and she was like, yeah, of course. Okay, but let's change this up now. Let's try something else. And that was our process.
Yeah, that's something that I picked up in the book, and maybe it was near the end, the guidebook. I you know, Nyasha, I think you were probably writing that part of the guidebook of like this undercurrent of feeling like imposter syndrome, or at least I could sense your humbleness of like, you know what, I don't know everything, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I just really appreciated that, because I often talk about imposter syndrome, and you know, even for me, I'm 25 years in to like working with tarot pretty much every single day, and yet it still pops up for me as well. Sometimes I think, who am I to be doing this? You know, blah blah blah. Like, hello, negative self-talk. Thanks, goodbye. But I'm so curious about, you know, how did it show up? And I also, I guess, like, I want to kind of integrate this back into, you know, like the real vision for the deck. Like this, there'll be part of you that was like, I know what this deck is about. And then that little monkey mind that goes, hey, do you really know what you're doing? Is this really it? So tell me a bit about how that worked, and what was that vision for the deck?
So I will say my imposter syndrome probably came through first of all with making the deck, because I'm like, am I qualified to do this? But the thing is that I was struggling with tarot decks that existed. I'm a visual learner, so a huge part of me even choosing to make the deck was to learn tarot through this creation. So I know it's powerful and big for others to learn on this deck, but this was also my deck of understanding the tarot meanings through what visually that looks like for me, and having that literally come into life as I'm learning, you know? So that for me was very much where my imposter syndrome started. And then I think when the deck's done, you know, people are so excited about it and want to speak to you about it. And it's just the nerves of sometimes, again, it's like, yes, I've created this deck. Yes, I feel like I know it, but do I really know it? Do I really understand the true meanings of tarot and all of the cards? So just those things coming up. But, you know, I'm pretty much one of those people that, yeah, I hear those things, but I'm going to push past that and keep going, because um, I don't know. I'm not going to sit in self-doubt. We're going to keep going.
Yeah, because that's the thing with this whole imposter syndrome. If you listen to it, then you'd probably stop taking action, and then no one gets to enjoy this like amazing, beautiful deck, which has such deep meaning and significance to it. I'd love for you to speak a bit about the inspiration for the deck, and specifically, you know, Black Tarot. Like, tell me more about why this deck needs to be in the world right now.
Yeah. I really wanted a deck with representation. I'm not saying none exist. There are some out there, and there are some beautiful indie creators that I love to support when they're creating decks. Um, but I wasn't seeing enough representation in divinational tools. And the more I was getting readings done by me, I was learning that that runs in my blood. That is something that my ancestors did. And using different divinational tools. So that felt very natural for me. And I was like, I feel like I need to start creating my own divinational tools in that way. And so that's when I stepped into that. Um, and Kimishka, not only was I seeing amazing things happening on her side, on her Instagram, and the way she was creating, but like her being in the motherland felt like so divinely correct to have that energy put into the deck. I just was like, this is so right. So all of that combined felt like the stars were aligned.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. And like, I'm going to show some of the artwork, and this will work very well for our video. Maybe not so well for our podcast. We'll see if we keep it in. But just to give you an idea, so this is the Empress, and it's just beautiful. And I love just like the ochre color, like the land, like the color of the land and the earth, you know, that really represents to me. And Kimishka, this was one of the cards that you said that you pulled before today, actually. So surprisingly, it's just right there. Oh yeah, the Daughter of Baskets. So she features on the front of the deck. And baskets is cups, right? Yes. Beautiful. And yeah, I really love the simplicity of this artwork, and yet it has such a deep like richness. Like, you found what are those core symbols that will really speak to the energy of the deck. but you've kept it simple. And I had a very similar intention, like with Everyday Tarot and even with our Biddy Tarot deck, because I want people to focus on, like, I don't want them to get all like, oh, what are all these things on the card? What do we do with them? Just like, here are a few things, just connect with these things, and it brings you to that core essence.
Yes.
Oh, I love this one. Yeah. 9 of Baskets. Very like slick. Very cute. Actually, speak to me. Like, what was the inspiration on this one?
I mean, very much like luxury, like we've come into ourselves kind of energy. I mean, it's coins. So, we know that wealth is beyond just the physical, but we're looking at coins. So, and pentacles. So I did it in more of a earthly plane or materialistic sense of coming into yourself.
Yeah, that's neat. And even actually just going back to the Emperor, what I love about the Emperor is you've got the moon cycles here, which we don't typically see with Emperor and that masculine energy. What was the inspiration for including those?
So the moon in itself, I think, is just a really important aspect of our daily lives, whether we acknowledge it or not, right? It affects everything. The moon controls the tides. Why? It's water. And how, like, we know what percentage of our bodies are water. So we know it automatically affects us. And so I think that it's important to know what's happening with the moon, understanding the moon phases. I think part of this deck to me was also stepping back into moving more seasonally and living more in tune with nature in that way. And I think it helps us in terms of time. I know for me, when it's full moon or new moon, I'm like, all right, it's about that time for a spiritual bath. So it's like I have these natural ways of telling myself, knowing when things should be moving. And I think, again, people who are utilizing the moon and utilizing the seasons in terms of the way they're moving in business, I think are going to be living much healthier lives and lives that are much more in balance than expecting you to be on the hamster wheel going 100, like at 110, 24/7, right? So
yeah, neat. And yeah, because actually with the Emperor, you're seeing too, like that element of water. I really like that you've created that balance between masculine and feminine. That is kind of that healed masculine.
yes.
Kimishka, do you have a favorite card in the deck?
The Empress, which I pulled today.
Yeah, let's show that again, because I just love her curvy body. It's so beautiful. And yeah, there's just such a like joy and magic when I look at this card. It's beautiful. And are there any particular elements in the Empress that really stand out for either of you?
Kimishka, can you go?
Oh, sure. The water element, and I incorporated flowers too, which oh no, I've just forgotten what flower I put on the.
It looks like a lotus.
Yes, there we go. Oh yes, the lotus. There. So part of my spirituality comes from my religion, which in Hinduism practice, like water is one of those. It's used to cleanse objects, which is also in the virtual world, and the lotus, which is like coming into yourself and sort of like that rebirth, re-energize feeling. And those elements really stuck out to me. This is the easiest card for me to do. I don't know why, but I really felt that energy, and I guess it just came together really well.
Yeah, beautiful. And it actually, like, now putting it together with the Emperor, I can really see that balance, because it has very similar visual aspects with the water and the moon cycles. So that's a really beautiful sort of juxtaposition of both. Nyasha, is there anything in the Empress that really stands out for you?
Yeah, I was going to say that kind of like you talking about the Emperor and the Empress, it's interesting because there have been some people who are like somewhat been taken back by my interpretations in terms of having, like, even within coins, I'll have water. And, people consider pentacles or coins more earthly. And so people have been like, wait, because they automatically look at the imagery and just try and like really quickly be able to tell what suit it is. And I think it's still there, but I don't think the elements are separate. And I think Kimishka and I have learned this even further with our elemental deck that we created, our oracle deck. So my sister and I co-created authored an elemental oracle deck that comes out September. And so I think that deck has amplified even more for us that the elements are not separate. They're always entwining, always mixing, and they lean on each other, you know? Yes.
Yeah, and I think it's a good segue into activism and tarot. So one part of activism is bucking the trend and challenging the status quo. And clearly you're already doing that just on one level of like including different elements in the cards. And it's so interesting to see, you know, how do people respond to that? They're like, oh, that's not tarot, you know, because like in Biddy tarot, we're here to like really modernize and bring tarot into like everyday world. And sometimes that doesn't necessarily land in a favorable way. People get challenged or triggered by that. So I'm curious about, you know, what were some of your intentions with this deck to kind of challenge the status quo, and then how has that landed as well?
Yeah. So the main intention of the deck is ancestral connection. So I think, again, that was really my journey that I was going through spiritually at the time. And I was always consistently going through is building this relationship with my ancestors. And I think a lot of people are trying to redo that and kind of build those relationships with their ancestors, their healed ancestors, because, you know, we have a lot of ancestors and some ancestors we might not want to work with. But the ancestors that are, I would say, ancestors known and unknown who are in alignment with my highest good is who I'm talking to. And so those ancestors, we want people to be able to start connecting with them, hearing their soul missions, and getting guidance as they're navigating, you know, on Earth here on this journey. So that was the main goal in terms of the deck. And I feel like I get messages all the time in my DMs of people saying, oh my gosh, like this has helped me so much on my spiritual walk, my spiritual journey. I feel like I'm getting so in touch with my roots, my ancestors, and that's really what this deck's about. So I do feel like the intention that was set has been received and is being received by people who are engaging with the deck. It's funny because, again, everyone's different. Some people say this deck is like great for first time users, and some people say, oh my gosh, no, like you need to be a seasoned tarot user. So there's so many differing opinions on that. And, you know, I think those who need the deck will hear the call.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And Kimishka, like how does activism kind of play out for you as an artist? Do you feel like you're an activist artist in a way, or are you here to support you know, Black Tarot and where that's heading?
I do feel like I'm an activist artist at this point. Just breaking down stereotypes. I mean, I'm of Indian descent. My ethnicity is Indian, but just illustrating this deck, which was not out of my comfort zone. I am South African, and I guess activism has played a huge part in my life for a long time. In South Africa, being part of this rainbow nation, we're exposed to so many different cultures, and you know, there's this constant fight inside of me that, you know, for equality. And I guess it was really lovely to have portrayed that, you know, in this deck. There's a lot of powerful imagery. As I said before, we started in 2020, so there was a lot going on, especially like the Black Lives Matter movement. And it was great, like having that imagery in the deck. And yeah, a lot of what I do as an illustrator is trying to break that boundary and showcase to the world a little bit more of you know, the diversity that's out there. And yeah, I don't know. Did I answer the question correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And I think that's what's beautiful about like your partnership is you both just bring like your own unique energy and essence and history and connection to country and people and so on. And I think that's what's created such, this divine magic in the deck.
To the activism book. So obviously I identify as an activist, and there's a lot of layers in that for me in terms of when I stepped into spirituality, and you start diving into, all that comes with that. So, the divinational tools, when you walk into shadow work, when you walk into um, manifesting, and all these different things. I think that something that is very evident is that I think that scarcity mindset and fear and all these different things that are in these systems of white supremacy, capitalism, the patriarchy, and colonization, all of those systems encourage your fear and scarcity mindset. And what comes with that is that people stepping into spirituality are stepping in a new way to have that change those energies for them and move in different energies, which is fabulous and wonderful. That's we're here for it. But I noticed very quickly that it was very centered on self. And while I'm going to be the first one to tell you that if you're going to give to others, your cup needs to be full before you're giving to others. That is number one. I do think that there's space once you are healed, once you are in a place where you are in abundance and overflowing. I would like people who are moving in the spiritual space to step into moving collectively in activism. I think there's a space for us to move differently in the world. I don't want to go too deep into it because I feel like we could really be here and like there's layers. But what I will say is that this deck definitely, I think, because being an activist, you can read when you read my descriptions, it's very evident. I'm asking for you to move, to make change, to break cycles, to do things differently. And that's evident in the Oracle deck as well. Now, what I will say is I'm so glad that we're having this conversation because I think more and more people are starting to awaken to utilizing tarot and utilizing these social spaces for our spiritual spaces and our spiritual communities towards change, towards the world that we want and believe in. And so I have to give a shout out because there's someone who is doing phenomenal work in this regard. And I just would like put their book on your radar when it comes out. So there is a friend of mine named Lane Smith, and they have written a book. I got to do a sensitivity pre-read and I was blown away. It's called 78 Acts of Liberation, Tarot to Transform Our World. And it is phenomenal in really looking at each card, looking at movements that have happened in the world through those cards and what the cards represent, and how we can take that energy and amplify it and continue to amplify it in community. And what else do we need right now in terms of tarot? I'm like, that is perfect. I think that's the place we need to step into.
Oh man, I love it. Okay, you need to give me the details. I can find them onto the podcast because I think you've touched on a really powerful point that hasn't been in my awareness until today. And I'm so glad you've talked about this, of that difference between tarot for individual healing and self-awareness versus tarot for collective self-awareness and collective change. That is super, super powerful. And I really think that really speaks to the power of tarot on such a bigger level for sure. So I'd be very keen to learn more too about the book, but I think too, in its own right, Black Tarot is doing part of that, right? That's your intention, to put that out into the world, and collectively it's shifting and changing that whole landscape. So thank you for sharing that, because I think, that's a very important Very powerful message for sure. Has there been any kind of resistance or challenge in the release of Black Tarot and what it's representing? Or do you feel like it's flowing?
Kimishka, do you want to speak to that?
Oh yeah. I feel like it's just been flowing. We haven't had any resistance so far. The reception has been amazing. I think more and more people have started to see the deck in just commercial spaces, and just the messages we've been getting from people. There hasn't been anything negative so far. Not that I've seen. I'm not sure. Nyasha, have you seen anything recently?
Anything negative, I think that there's people have questions, which is fair because it's like a different interpretation and people have curiosities and things. One thing I will say that is brought up is there are some people, I mean, I'm part of the LGBTQA community, but there are those who feel like the deck can feel a little heteronormative in that way, especially in the relationships. What I did receive, even from my friend Lane, who I spoke about, who's writing the book, they said to me that at first they were triggered, and then they spoke about how when they sat it with their guides and their ancestors, they saw it from a different perspective. First of all, they voiced that there's a lot of communal care in the deck, even if there's not relationships that are not directly LGBTQA. There are relationships that feel like lots of communal care and could be interpreted differently. And I think Kimishka and I have also noted that so we definitely did draw people with specific sexes in mind, and other people have thought that they're different sexes. So we're like, okay, we'll embrace that. We go with the flow on that. We're not mad about that. I will voice the reason why the relationships, at least the romantic ones, are heteronormative in the deck is because part of my healing journey and coming into myself and my Black identity was healing my relationship with the Black man. I am married to a Black man. I never thought I would. That was a journey that it was an unexpected journey and turn for me. I had a lot of prejudice around Black men that the world had given me, that I through different experiences, but I had things to work through. And so for me, I wanted to do my own internal healing, but I also wanted to do healing for the community because we have been deeply pitted against each other as the Black man and the Black woman through enslavement in the United States. And continually, there were many, many movements. As much as the feminist movement has done, it caused a lot of harm to the Black family as well. And so taking all of that into, things are never like black and white. There's always, there's bittersweet. I feel like there's magic and there's also problematic. I think we can say this, for example, with The Little Mermaid that just came out, the live action. Beautiful in so many ways, and then there's so many issues. It's both, right? And so in all of that, for me, having a Black man and a Black woman in healthy, strong relationships felt like activism to me, felt powerful to me, felt like fighting the system to me, because that's not what they expect. That's not what they wanted. That's what they were intentionally breaking up. So to me, that felt necessary for this deck.
Ah, yes. Thank you again, because I think that's really, again, a very, very powerful message, because again, it's like it's not always what it seems on the front, right? I'm so glad you shared your perspective in terms of the Black man and Black woman and how that's been pitted against each other. Again, that's not in my awareness until now, and I really appreciate it is. And I can see how again, it's challenging the status quo, isn't it? And just like, really, does it have to be this particular way? Well, actually, what if we look at it in this way? And what if we do that with real deep intention? Yeah, it's beautiful. And
that symbology in one of the cards, I don't know if Kimishka remembers, but I think it's the 5 of Swords or Knives is on our deck. It's like 5 of Swords, but it's the 5 of Knives. And that card, if you look at that card, it's a Black man and a Black woman. They're pitted against each other. One is light skinned, one is dark skinned. And if you look in the background, you have kind of this king who's sitting on a throne, looking down at them, just watching it for entertainment. And you have all these shadows of people who aren't really stepping in or doing anything either, but also just watching, observing the audience. And so the intention of that card for the Five of Wands, it was always for me like unnecessary fighting to me. That's how I envision it. It's like fighting that doesn't really need to be happening. It isn't getting anywhere. And so that to me was so necessary in terms of thinking about colorism, the light skin, the dark skin. You know, we have inner fighting within our own community in that way. Then Black male versus female, the Black man versus the Black woman. And then again, it's this aspect of like, this has all been done through systems, the king, the crown, watching over all of this, and for entertainment. And, you know, there's so much audience that are sitting on the side and not creating change and just allowing the system to continue and just seeing it as this is the way things are.
Yes. Wow. I can really see how using each of the cards is this way of being able to convey stories in like your truth, right? And you're able to express a story in a situation and a whole like line of history through just one card and one imagery. And so, because oftentimes, you know, we pick up a deck and we go, oh, that looks nice, oh, I'll do a card reading with that. But there's like so much behind it, which is fantastic. I'm so curious, actually, then what are you doing around like being able to share each of these stories? Like, do you, my little like online business brain goes, do you have a course? Or are there like, how are you expressing this stuff with the world and getting those stories out there?
Honestly, I haven't done a great job about that. I'll be honest. I have had some people who have asked me, and I think that's maybe this is where my imposter syndrome is coming up, right? Doing more things outside of what exists so far. Because I did just recently attend like a deck session where people were just talking about how to engage with deck in different ways. They engage with decks. It was just like a Zoom session in an evening. And I like was in this session, I was like, oh my gosh, I could absolutely do this. And I have 2 decks, so I could totally do something like this. So yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. Maybe this is the sign I pulled the Ace of Coins. So you might be sending, you know, guidance my way in this way.
Oh, 100%. Okay. I could imagine so many things. I could even imagine just like short videos or like a short sort of, what is it? Like almost like poetry or words, like word magic around each of these, like short stories with each of the cards, and just, yeah, really bringing that to life. And each of those videos is like this little nugget and this little seed of change and awareness as well, like shining that light of awareness onto these different stories. Oh, please do that. So I guess in light of that, like I am curious about like what next with, particularly with the Black Tarot, like how are you using it in your future work? What do you have planned around it? Videos, online courses, or
Kimishka, do you want to go?
Oh, no, I think you should take this one.
I mean, so right now, I've just received kind of the first copies of the Oracle deck. So I know pairing is a big thing. So I was so excited to get them together, to start playing around with them together and pairing them. Because, you know, Oracle's just so fun for clarification cards, I think, when you're doing readings. And so that has gotten me really excited. And I know how many people have been excited about Black Tarot. So I was like, oh, I'm so excited for people to be able to do them together and see how the energy feels. So that's a huge jump and leap and like excitement for me at this moment. And then I think other things with Black Tarot, I mean, I have some upcoming events that I'm really excited to present Black Tarot at, and just showcase the deck. And I also received recently, I had someone create just in honor of Black Tarot and its existence, an embroidered bag of Black Tarot. So like the deck box is an embroidered bag. And it looks like a book, like it's like a book bag. And it's so adorable and just, I'm having fun just creating unique pieces with imagery from the deck. Because I think the deck, Kimishka did a phenomenal job on the illustrations. I was like, I have obviously visual here, but like when we did the Black Tarot events, when it was launched, they made these beautiful big posters of some of the cards. And so I was able to pull some of the cards. People were able to take those posters home. So people have these beautiful big imagery of Black Tarot in their space, which I love because I always pull cards for my year, for my space, you know, what's feeling good in that way. And so I love doing that. And I think it amplifies that energy in your space. So I think trying to imagine other ways people can engage with Black Tarot and have Black Tarot in their space is really something that feels very much in alignment. I like your idea of the courses. I was like, okay, maybe that's what I'll step into, is like doing courses. And I also feel the call to like teach people how to create a deck. Like, how did we even do this? Like, I think Kimishka and I could definitely step into teaching those kinds of things, because it's like a lot of people, I actually have a call tomorrow where someone wants to create a deck and doesn't know how to do it. And they're like, how do you do this? So I think there is room for teaching so much through what we've created. And so I'm hoping that Black Tarot will open doors for engagement with different audiences, different communities, who are interested in learning the process of creating decks, doing workshopping around that. In the spring, it was really fun. I did a workshop at the Boulder Museum out here, and it was an event centered around spring. So, you know, in the living seasonally, we looked at Black Tarot through spring, what cards in the tarot represent spring, and then we took the step of doing some spring related crafts that are spiritual. So everyone made their own spiritual bath kit, and they also made mason bee homes for native bees. So, you know, doing things like that, having people engage with the deck in ways that feel in connection with the seasons and the connection with the moon. But I think that there's a lot of expansion of where Black Tarot can go. And you've definitely sent that energy our way. And my brain's going and it's been going, but I think you have really good energy.
Yeah. And, you know, even just as you're talking, I was thinking, don't just teach people how to like create a deck, but how can you create a deck that is for collective conscious change? You know, how do you create a deck that has a powerful message for change? I think like, because there's all layers of different creating decks, right? I'm creating something so it looks nice and it's easy to use. But you're creating something that is designed to have this ripple effect, and to speak to people on a level that maybe they haven't even been aware of, that's, you know, within themselves. So I think there's something really powerful in there.
Maybe it's an expansion of beyond tarot, right? Like it's a divinational tools towards change.
Yes.
It's not even limited to just cards. But I think, yeah, I definitely have been hearing the call, and I'm hoping Lane will take me up on it, but I would love to write something that is in alignment with like collective change, like doing things that are towards collective change. So that is definitely one of my goals and missions that I'm hearing very deeply.
Yeah, beautiful. And Kimishka, what role is Black Tarot playing in your life, and how are you kind of engaging with it?
um, well, it's been a journey. I guess a lot more. I'm seeing a lot more in terms of followers and people who want to see more of a change. Coming to me and asking me different questions, and also in my life, like personally, I think Black Tarot has been this big spiritual awakening for me. The deck is called a spiritual awakening deck, and it's changed a lot of how I illustrate now, and sort of how I'm doing things in the future for myself, spiritually. And I guess I have we worked on the second deck together, and that was lovely, like the oracle, but it does take a lot out of you as an illustrator. So at some point I did feel myself just slowing down. And I think right now I'm kind of at the slowing down process and like getting ready for the next big project. Um, yeah, I think just in terms of how people see Black Tarot and their amazing words, that's just been great because I never saw it getting this far.
Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
say that rest is revolutionary. You know, you have to have balance and go through your seasons. Especially, I was just talking to my sister who I wrote the Oracle deck, and she illustrated the Oracle deck for us. I was talking to her this morning, and she's in winter, like it's dead of winter for her, and it is freezing. So for her, things have slowed down a lot. And so timing is always interesting because, like, for us, we're in a completely different season. I'm in a different energy than she is. And so, you know, finding balance within that because, you know, we're moving through different seasons and different seasons of creativity and work. Yeah. And so I think that, like, that is something that, again, all in the world and companies and businesses would benefit from learning to move and create our calendars and our movements and our business in a more seasonal way. I feel like the New Year's always sometimes a letdown because it's not like January just in the dead of winter doesn't always make sense for us to be like amplifying our energy and work. Whereas in the spring, I feel like everything's starting to wake up. It's like, okay, I can feel that motivation again, right? And so I think our bodies naturally do this. Nature naturally does this. Animals naturally do this. It's to me very evident in the way that moving seasonally would just make, I think, things flow better and people move more in alignment with what makes sense for them.
Yes, couldn't agree more. Yep. I think that the seasons and being in that beautiful pattern of rest and then action, even if that's just a day of rest, a month of rest, a year of rest, whatever it is needed. Yeah, beautiful. I've got two final questions. So one, I'm really curious because we've spoken quite a bit about the activism side and using tarot for collective change. And I know that you have probably spoken to the hearts of many who may be interested in following a similar path. What advice would you have? Like if our listeners are sort of feeling that call of like, yeah, I want to create some change in this world, let's go. What would you say? What would be your advice?
I mean, I always say that the work does start internally, just in terms of starting with that decolonizing yourself. I always talk about decolonizing, indigenizing, and moving towards liberation. But you kind of have to get into those steps yourself so that you're able to do it for others. And then I do think that like skin color does matter in this work. Like we're not on the same journeys. We're going through different paths and movements, but you know, being conscious of your privilege based off of how light your skin is and being able to like catch when you are moving in ways that are amplifying the systems that are created to harm. And so a big thing I would say is making sure that you honor. We're all going to make mistakes. No one's perfect. Like that's part of the process, right? Like everyone is going to make mistakes in this journey. But the biggest aspect is how you deal with them. And then the accountability aspect on what's the aftermath and how is that looking. So the reality is it's a journey. It's a lifelong journey. I'm consistently every day decolonizing and discovering things. I think the other day I realized that images where Black people are moving in violence towards white people like causes something in me. And I realized that that's something that was internally programmed in me to fear and to not be okay with. But with imagery the other way doesn't bother me as the same way as like the way that I get scared in that same sense. So things you need to sit with. I think another example I've seen many times is when it comes to language. Generally, when a white person who speaks multiple languages, you know, and English is not their first language, they are given more grace and people are more kind and lenient on them than a person of color who doesn't, English is not their first language and they might know multiple languages. So just catching all these things, and we're learning as we go, but the point is being open to learning, making sure you're in spaces and reading and diversifying what you're seeing. I know that when I first met my husband, he was like, oh my gosh, your Netflix is so white. We got to talk about this. And that was like the first conversation, was changing up my Netflix, changing what I'm watching, making sure I'm exposing myself to other things. I love watching things like The Little Mermaid and talking about all the magical, great things about it, but also critiquing and talking about things where they could do better. And that's a beautiful space for me. And I'm so lucky to have friends who love doing that kind of work with me and love having those conversations. And they're important because that's how we're going to better things and better our world, is with those kinds of conversations, with that kind of dialogue, and with understanding that we don't know everything and everyone's bringing their own experience to the table, and we can learn from the more experiences that are in the space and the more voices who are able to voice what they're seeing through their lens, the stronger our equity lens is going to be.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's beautiful and very powerful advice. I appreciate it. And Kimishka, what would you share to someone who might be thinking about maybe more on the artist side of like, how can I use my artwork to share a profound message and to create that collective change?
I think just start. Don't doubt yourself. That's the most important thing. Part of this journey, creating Black Tarot with Nyasha, was just saying to myself, let's just go for it. It may seem scary. You may think that you're offending someone or you're not doing it correctly, but just go for it. There's always a positive and a negative to everything. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion on whatever you're about to create, but create it anyway and see what comes of it. That's, I guess, the most important thing I would like to put out there.
Yeah. I think the thing about illustrations is that illustrations tell me so much about an illustrator. Like, I can see so much about you. So with Kimishka, what's really cool about Kimishka is that, like, generally any project that I bring to her, it's a very different design every project. I want a very different vibe. And Kimishka, I think that's a cool thing, because most people as illustrators box themselves into a very specific style. And I think partially they do that to niche themselves so that they get work in the sense of like what traditional the man wants, like, publishers or whoever wants. But I think what's really always fun with Kimishka, she's so willing to play in terms of illustration. And I think that's really, really fun, is she's always willing to explore and try new things with illustrations and try new styles, which I think is not as common in an illustrator. And I love that about her work. I also think, it's so evident for me to see where people have biases and where people have internal things they don't realize. And examples of this is like, someone can be drawing like my children's book and be drawing this beautiful Black family. And then, in the background, they put, for example, a TV and, a white person on the TV. And it's like, I think sometimes I always say, if your brain defaults to white, there's some reflecting to do. So it's like, why not have someone else on the TV? Why not have someone else who doesn't look like where your brain is automatically defaulting to? Another illustration I had was, it's my upcoming book coming out in December called Keep Dreaming Black Child. And I love the illustrator, her name's Sawyer Cloud. And she drew this picture of this child walking through this door, and the child is walking on all these beautiful big books like that are magical, inspiring. And the books she chose to draw were like Peter Pan and, I don't know, just all these like classic kind of magical series, which is not bad. But I was kind of like, in it being centered around the Black child, why can't we use our beautiful folk tales and our fairy tales and our magical stories that like from the 90s that were there, that were still existing, even though we're doing so much work to bring more out now, there were things that were out there. And so I had her add those in. We pulled up some specific images of these stories that did bring magic and joy at the time, you know, that were the historical stepping stones to dreaming and that magic for Black people, you know? And I think to me, the illustrations, it's the little things that make all the difference. It's like, yes, you can have the big picture, but it's like, to me, it's those little details and those little aspects that like amplify your activism and your change.
Oh, I love it. Just like, it's just challenging things, right? It's just really challenging and questioning, and all the things that we take for granted or that just, you know, are on this autopilot, right? That we do and see and reflect and so on. It's like, but is that, you know, should that be there? Is that actually a representation of this? Or what does it mean if that thing is placed there, right? I just so...
Like relationships, for example. It's like, how often do you see a Black person and an Indian person together in a relationship in a visual sense, like on a TV show, in a movie? It's not that common. And so thinking about challenging things like that, you know, and we know, again, historically, Black people were pushed out of leisure spaces. So pushed out of pools, pushed out of parks and nature spaces. And there's still systems today that are making that challenging for people to be in those spaces, but it does happen. We are pushing into those spaces, we are existing. And so making sure that we are visually seen in spaces where people are just assuming we're not, you know?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. This is like, it's really, really powerful conversation. I so appreciate you being able to really share, like, from a very authentic, strong, powerful place about how this is coming up for you, and then also how you are sharing that through the work that you're doing. I really do appreciate it. Tell me, where can we find Black Tarot? In every good bookstore, no doubt, and also where can we find out both? Where can we find out more about both of you as well?
Yeah, I mean, I have to give a shout out. Black Tarot is in Target. So if you live in the United States, you can go to Target and get it, which would be amazing. That helps us and lets Target know they made a good choice putting a, you know, BIPOC created product in their space. I don't think I've ever seen a lot of decks in Target. Like, that has not been something that I've seen a lot in Target. So that's huge for us. That was a huge win. And so if you have availability to do that, that's great. I always say local bookstores. If you are Colorado, your Tattered Cover, your Boulder Bookstore have these, Black Tarot. And then if you're online, you know, you've got Barnes & Noble, you've got Target Online, you've got all these spaces. I try and do everyone before Amazon because not a huge Jeff Bezos fan, but, you know, there's so many spaces that you can pick up Black Tarot and the journal.
Yes.
And I will say that to find me, I am on TikTok, I'm on Instagram and Lemonade. And if you find me on my Instagram, if you go to my link tree, you'll be able to access everything else. So that's at Writing to Change the Narrative. And you can access all my other things, my website, my blog, all the moving pieces. And I'm going to pass to Kimishka.
Well, I guess if anyone from South Africa is listening, it's actually at our big bookstore called Exclusive Books, which was a big win for me. I think Black Tarot is actually, globally, you can find us in different bookstores. Like, I think in the UK, it's like Watershed, and I'm sorry, I'm blanking out on a couple of the bookstores, but if you just type in Black Tarot online, in your home country, you'll definitely be able to find us in your bookstore. I did see that in South Korea, there were a couple of places, and Australia too. So yeah, we're available. Black Tarot is available everywhere, and you can find me mostly on Instagram. I do have my website up at just Kimishka Naidoo, but Kimishka, I'm definitely reachable on Instagram.
Beautiful. Well, we'll also make sure to post those links wherever we post links with this episode. And that way, yeah, we can easily find you. Thank you from like the bottom of my heart. I'm so glad we got to talk. I'm so happy and thrilled like with the deck, you know, even just, I remember picking this up just last week and what hit me straight away was just a sense of pride. And just deep gratitude that we have creators like you producing such beautiful products. It's not even that. It's not even just beautiful products with such deep meaning and deep purpose, and that are designed to have a really huge ripple effect on our global consciousness and how we see things. So I really appreciate that you have created this. I really appreciate what you have shared today. And I know it's spoken to me, and I know it will speak to many of our listeners. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I cannot wait to see what else you create. And the Oracle deck. Oh wait, what was the Oracle deck name? What is it called?
Okay. So it's called the Elemental, sorry.
Sorry, there we go. The Elemental.
Sorry. I don't know why it's like right next to me. So yes, this is the deck. The journal is so beautiful. It's so pretty.
Oh yeah. So Elemental Alchemist Oracle.
Yes. And so I wrote water and air, and then my sister wrote fire and earth, and then we wrote spirit together. And then I know, Kimishka, you know what you're going to bring up. So tell them your favorite part of creating it.
Okay, sorry. Well, my favorite part of creating this deck is we actually created the 4 goddesses and spirits just in the beginning, and we decided to use a lot of African pattern throughout the deck. It's very minimalist, and you know, from an illustrator point of view, I loved this deck. It was just an easy flow for me, and I grabbed a lot of inspiration while being in South Africa and sort of looking around at different like pattern and artworks that were around me at the time. And just I feel like this deck is just, it's an amazing deck to pair with the Black Tarot, because I know a lot of people were looking for it. And then my favorite part about working on this project was creating the journal. We have these little, let me see if I can find at least a part of it to show you, where there's like spaces where people can track, like there are a lot of trackers that we created for this.
So it's a bullet journal. I don't know if you know bullet journals, but like we created these visuals that you track different aspects of your life. So this one is your gratitude tracker. And so you color in the clouds each day as you experience gratitude, and we have them for all the things. So she created these gorgeous bullet trackers that are like just like nothing that's out there.
Oh, I love it. Well, I cannot wait to see when the Elemental Alchemist comes out. Sounds amazing. Well, thank you so much, ladies. It's been an absolute joy and pleasure to talk with you today. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Hey, if you loved this video, then make sure you check out this next video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. See you next time.